Let's kill that bass head. Alright, let's do this.
I'm on the air, we got this pockets flow. It's me and Tony on the mics, we gotta let you know of current events, little gaming, sprinkle in some entertainment. We stay humble, but our moms still think we're famous. Turn up the bass and baby, maybe let that magic flow. Our spoken word is all the things you really wanna know. Having a good time on the show, T-Bows and Matty G. Tune in and hit subscribe and join us on the FAPs.
Welcome everybody to the Freaking Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Bowes, and sitting next to me, of course, is not Matty G, as he could not make it today, but we have a very, very special extra, I want to say last minute, but this was actually a surprise for everybody. We have a co-host and bass player for Biff Naked, Ferdy Bellin. Ferdy, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, glad to be here.
It's absolutely amazing. And as you can see by the character down below, we, of course, have our official guest today on the show is rock legend and frontman for the sensational power chord band Goddo, Greg Godovitz. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, lads.
Oh, priceless.
Something funny?
Well,
it's nice to be here. Hello, Ferdy.
Hello, Greg.
All right. And Anthony, nice to see you as well.
Nice to see you as well. Thanks for being on the show. I have so many questions already just with the glasses. And I think, you know what, maybe words, no. We're going to jump into some news first. I know this question's so great, but
show you this.
I'm going to bring into the camera a little closer here. And
alien
abduction.
It's an alien cow abduction in a box. I got this. This is all the presents that I got for Christmas were about alien abductions.
There's a
I'll show you before we get it. I'll just show you how it is.
Foreshadowing there.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you've read the book yet, but I get there's a little stand that comes with it. But when I try to do this on a radio show or something, it always falls. But here's what happens: I click this.
Hey, I love it.
Just like Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, and then there's a little cow here, and this comes down and grabs it, and then we hear this. And then it, of course, flies off and takes the cow apart.
Because that's what extraterrestrials do. They just,
right?
Yes, cow mutilations and other things. Anyway, we'll get into it in my book, but I'm a big believer of alien life, as we'll get to. But for the time being, let's get rid of this stupid. This actually lives on my Buddha out on my deck. These things here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I have an Elvis bust out there that's painted silver, bright gold as well.
Amazing.
My neighbors think we're weird.
Well, this world needs a little bit more weird, especially our show. So we do love it. And speaking of weird, let's jump into some
my hair
today. Yeah. So today's article I have, or the first one I have, is student legally changes name after a fish in exchange for 176 pounds English pounds of free sushi. So, this fish-loving university student officially changed their name after a chain of sushi restaurants offered an all-you-can-eat sushi meal for the person who changed their name, along with 5 friends. Officials in Taiwan were begging people to stop changing their name to salmon after more than 130 fish lovers changed their name to get a bag of free sushi. The incident, of course, which has been dubbed the salmon crisis in local media, has seen lots of young people formally requesting to change their name at the government offices. The unusual situation that promoted the Japanese chain Sushiro had run a 2-day promotion ending on the 18th, which offered free all-you-can-eat meals to any customer and 5 of their friends that would change their name. The customers just needed to show the ID with the character, the Chinese character for salmon. One college student basically told local television that they had changed their name and managed to save 176 pounds. However, the name they used on their license roughly translated to explosive, good-looking salmon. They told the news station, "I just changed my name this morning," and to all the characters, Bao Cheng Yu, and we already have saved over 7,000 Taiwanese dollars, which works out to be $310 Canadian.
That's about what I spend on sushi every 2 weeks. Yes, no, it's true. We have a Japanese. The place is called Nakamori. It's in Scarborough where we live.
Okay.
And it was right by the famous old Nob Hill Hotel where everybody played back in the day. Everybody played there.
Mm-hmm.
And he took it over about 5 years ago, and he studied with the Iron Chefs in Tokyo on how to make fine Japanese cuisine. And we discovered this guy. And I've spent way more than $300 in there in the last 5 years, I'll tell you. But the guy is incredible. I'm going to change my name after the show in honor of your gag there to Ebi Unagi. That's going to be my new name. So if you could change Greg Godovitz down there to Ebi Unagi, that would be really nice.
Right on.
I wish
Love
I could do that on the fly. That would work out really cool. So when you were saying about sushi, actually, it was really funny. We had a sushi restaurant that we really love. My wife and I love going to around us. And unfortunately, about 2 months ago, the place caught fire and burnt down. So we're missing out on all our sushi lately.
Well, and whereabouts are you located?
I'm just located just outside of Kingston, Ontario, which is
Kingston.
In the Kingston.
All right, know it well. I mean, we played down there so many times back in the day, and and then Chez Piggy, you got that down there.
Yep. Yeah.
That's still a great little restaurant, although Zal's no longer there. But
no, he's not. No, yeah. I know
that's what happens when you die. You don't get to hang around your own restaurant anymore.
Right.
It's a shame, really.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still quite a hot spot. A lot of people love going to it in the summer, and they always have very unique creations on the plate.
Yeah, I'd like to get down there. I always get afraid though, because I figure my past will catch up with me and I'll end up in one of the jails down there. So maybe somebody's read one of my books and decided that maybe this guy should spend some time in prison,
Well, if it's any consolation, one of the major ones have finally shut down, and it's just a tourism thing. So if you want to go to jail, you could just go take the tour.
No. With my luck, I'd go in there on tour and they'd lock me away. Just by the way, down on cell block 5, we've got Godovitz down there.
I always thought it was very interesting about these tours because I don't think they would fully clean these places for people to come through, and can guarantee you would not want to touch anything.
No. Yeah, licking the poles in the bars in the cells would be definitely off my list. Yeah, I'll bet you $20 you can't lick that bar cell,
right?
Or that cell bar. Yeah.
I used to live in Toronto for actually quite some time, and there was always a running bet whenever we'd go out drinking to anybody who would lick the handrail on the subway. And it was just, it doesn't matter how much booze and or money was involved. It was just not going to happen.
I was the guy actually, I can't remember if I was 25 or 30 at the time, who put his tongue on the pole in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It wasn't just me then? Is that what you're saying?
No. I stayed there for about 6 months before they realized what has gone wrong, So that old man still doing this. Anyway. Love that movie, that Christmas Story movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Scotty Schwartz was the kid who stuck his tongue on that. So
who was it?
Scott
Peter
Schwartz.
Billingsley.
Peter Billingsley was Ralphie.
He was Ralphie, but the kid who stuck his tongue to the pole was Scott Schwartz. And
he
was supposed to join us for a Christmas episode, and then he got called away for a last minute film. So
there's a restaurant down on Gerrard in Toronto called Batafol, and we went in there for dinner one night, and I see one of those leg lamps in the restaurant. And I look at it and I went, this is an old one. And then they had a ceramic thing, model of the chop suey house where they have the dinner at the end of the movie after the Bumpus hounds eat his turkey.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're singing fa ra 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 ra. This was the place where they filmed that.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the lamp was actually one of the real props. And the great sidebar to this story is that there's a winery in the Niagara region called Malivoire. It's a really good winery, Ontario Wines. And a friend of mine who was a principal at my high school, but not when I was there, He worked for Martin Malivore. It was Martin Malivore that invented the leg lamp. This guy that ended up being a wine, like a really successful wine guy. And he also invented the gag where the guy gets his tongue stuck on the pole.
Really?
And not to spoil it, but I'm going to anyway. They cut a hole in the pole, which was not cold, and they had a suction cup underneath it. So when the kid stuck his tongue, the tip of his tongue in the hole, they turned on the suction, and it made it look like he was stuck to it. And Martin Malivore came up with all of these gags. So I have a full-size leg lamp in my room downstairs, and my friend has promised me that this summer at some point he's going to get Martin Malivore to sign the leg lamp.
That would be really cool.
Just love it, love that kind of stuff, and a brilliant Canadian.
Yeah. I noticed recently that they around Christmas time you can find that leg lamp for sale nowadays. So it's
that's where I bought it 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's taken so long for to become a fad for people to buy it, though, right?
Yeah, I've got all sorts of Christmas ornaments like that. But what was great was my granddaughters were over Christmas Eve a few years ago, and I had it when they were having dinner and stuff. I put the big Fragile box on the front porch and said to the girls, "Someone's at the front door." And they went out there and they opened the door and I could hear them squealing, and they brought it in. They go, "Look, Judge, this is Fragile. It's the lamp, So we put it together, stuck it in the front window. And there's a really good friend of mine who's probably the best. Well, actually, I'm not sure he's the department store Santa. I think he's the real one. But I met him a number of years ago, and he flies back to, before he goes on his rounds, he flies back to one of his bases in Newfoundland late on Christmas Eve, but he always stops into my house. So after the lamp went out, I hear this knock at the side door, and I said to my granddaughters, "Could you go and get the door, please?" And they came downstairs in absolute, I can't even describe whether it was terror, abject terror, or just so freaked out they couldn't believe. They said, "Judge, Santa Claus is upstairs." And I said, "Well, don't be rude. Get the cookies, get some milk, and bring them in, And then they just sat there like staring at him. And one of them finally says, "Santa, can we ask you a question?" He says, "Oh, yes." He goes, "How is it that you can sit here when you're supposed to be taking toys around the world?" And he says, "Because of this." And he pulls out this gold key and he says, "I stop time. That's how I get it all done in one night. Would you like to hold it?" Now, of course, my granddaughters were 25 and 26 at the time, but they bought it.
Yeah.
They were good sports.
That's amazing.
It's actually a true story, but they were young. They were 7 or 8 or something. But it was just incredible that they really believed that. I said, "No, so listen, you guys mess around when you come over here. I got his phone number. I'm gonna rat you out to Santa Claus."
That's right.
They were always really well behaved when they came to the house.
Yeah. My youngest child, of course, she's 6, and they're kind of going through that phase where they're trying to tell kids, like, you got to be good or Santa Claus is going to leave you cold. And she was petrified. It was like probably the worst time leading up to Christmas, because she just thought everything she ever did wrong was going to come back to bite her, and she was really, really emotional. So it wasn't until Christmas morning, of course, then she was fully relieved that when she saw her gifts that
I always wanted a lump of coal, because I also know Superman. I know he would come over and crush it into a diamond for me.
Well, nowadays coal is probably even is pricier, right? It's actually got some street value to it.
Well, that's all my grandkids getting this Christmas. Then is just lumps of coal. I'll tell them you said so. Yeah.
Yep, it's got to be pure stuff. It can't be that like charcoal that comes out of a bag, though.
We've got lots of that.
The best way for barbecuing. So yes, let's talk about we're going to jump right in. Well, let's talk about your book. So
which one? We've got the first one, or we've got the new one?
So let's briefly touch base about your first book.
All right.
And because there is a lot of controversy around this book.
Well,
Greg Godovitz? Controversy? You don't say.
Let's put it this way. I was so loose when I wrote it. In other words, drinking lots of wine. And of course, alcohol being a great truth serum. I didn't spare anybody in this one,
Oh, good.
Yes, and it's funny when I did the Mike Bullard show when it first came out. He says, "Has anybody sued you yet?" And I said, "I wish they would. I would sell more copies." Somebody sued, But we mentioned the names in this book, and the funny thing is, I would write a horrible story about somebody in our organization doing something hideous, almost illegal or indecent. And I'd write it down, I'd start laughing, and then I'd phone them up and say, "Hey, I'm writing a book, and I just wrote this story about that time when you and the guy says, 'You've written that?' I said, 'Yeah.' He goes, 'If you put that out, I will sue you.' I said, 'Okay, not a problem. I'll take it out.' Between a man and a woman, every single person I did this to called me up 10 minutes later and said, 'That's a great story. Keep it in the book.'" They just wanted, it didn't matter how disgusting it was. They wanted it in the book. Yeah. So I come off great in the book, but everybody else, not so much.
The book that sells everyone up the river.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, even though I initiated most of the madness that went on in the book, I came off scot-free. Everybody else guilty as charged. But the first book, Travels with My Amp, starts in 1964 when I first discovered music for real, when the Beatles hit. Mm-hmm. And it goes to 1984. So it's, really it's just the first 20 years of my career. Mm-hmm. I didn't delve much into my bizarre childhood, which was just as messed up as my adult life, because you got to keep in mind, when I was 13 years old and I should have been playing guns out in the street, I was performing at after-hour clubs on Yonge Street from 1 o'clock till 3 in the morning.
Wow.
So how did that do with school? Let me think. I failed. And then my dad went nuts and said, "That's enough of this. You went into high school with honors and then you fail. I mean, how is that possible?" I said, "I don't care about this anymore. I want to be a Beatle, So
who doesn't?
Everybody did back then. I mean, I'll even show you a photograph here in the book of my hairdo at this point here. So this is me in 1964. I never get this right.
Like flight control.
That's just about as perfect a Beatle haircut as you can get.
Holy Robin Zander.
Yeah, it's a little bit more Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. I think he was my go-to guy. And of course, now you see what happens when you wear your hair like that when you're 13 and get it dyed, pink and green and stuff. It all, as my brother-in-law says, you have nice wavy hair. It's waving goodbye. So,
yeah,
I know. That's what I said when he first said it to me too. But so this book went through the first 20 years, but it encompasses all the early bands I was in when we were playing British invasion music, which included Brian and Ed Pilling, that eventually came back from England, and then we formed Flood. I was playing with Eddie Schwartz, the guy that wrote "Hit Me With Your Best Shot." We had a psychedelic band. And then I started playing with the blues when I was 15 with these guys that said to me, I answered an ad in the Toronto Telegram, which was around then. It wanted singing bass player. I happened to be one. But I was only 15. So when I called the guy, I told him I was 60 because I thought that made me sound much more mature. And they gave me the job anyway. But they explained to me that the Rolling Stones didn't write those songs that you know. These songs were written by guys named Howlin' Wolf and Bo Diddley and Junior Wells and Muddy Waters. And they gave me a crash course on, Chicago blues when I was a kid. Wow. And then, got into Sherman and Peabody with Buzz Sherman that ended up in Moxie. So, man, have I been blessed, because every band I've ever been in has always been good. And I've always been surrounded by legendary guys who became legendary musicians, songwriters.
Yeah, you definitely have had not only just a bit of a crazy ride in life, but the amount of people you've seen. I think I remember reading somewhere that you've also met Richard Branson.
I have
Virgin.
Yeah, I have a picture, I think, in this book of, it might be in this one, I'm not sure, Richard leaving the CFRB studios holding this book under his arm. Oh, and wow. I have a story about him in this book called "The Man Who Broke the Bank at Monte Carlo," and it's about when I'd seen a 2-page advertisement for his new studio in Oxfordshire called The Manor. And I showed it to the guys in Flood. And a month later, we are the first out-of-town band to go and move into The Manor, which was, the building was built by Oliver Cromwell. So, nice little bit of history. And then the stables and everything had been converted into the studio. Yep. They also had a very, very well-stocked wine cellar. They had a big L-shaped table, fireplace. It was everything you would expect, Mm-hmm. Mike Oldfield was there recording Tubular Bells.
Nice.
We didn't really get along too well. I burned a piece of the score in the fireplace in front of him one night just to, get a laugh. And only one of us was laughing and running. That was me.
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Greg Godovitz.
I'm known for it. I'm actually known for it. I majored in it. And then one night, Jorn Anderson, the drummer, a great drummer in Flood, him and I found the key, the skeleton key for the wine cellar.
Uh-oh.
And it's right. I had my terry cloth. I look like Harpo Marx when I was walking. Richard Branson gave me a top hat, which I put a daffodil in. And I had my comfy, pajamas on I wore all the time, and my terry cloth robe. So I look like Harpo Marx running around. But we found a bunch of eggs that were outside, and we loaded up our pockets. We went down, got completely snap drunk, opening as much wine as we could. And then we went upstairs. Now, keep in mind, this is a place that should demand respect. Oliver Cromwell, priceless tapestries on the wall, that sort of thing. Yeah. And we see Ed Pilling, the lead singer of Flood, sitting in a chair because the night before, things being, these bacchanalian dinners we had every night before we started recording, Ed was dancing on the table and leaped off and broke his foot.
Oh no.
So he's in a cast sitting there, and I come in and I go, "Comfy, Ed?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Fire nice and warm, is it?" "Yeah." "Sure you wouldn't like a little blanket?" "No." "Well, how about one of these?" And we started pelting him with eggs. And then all hell broke loose. We were throwing eggs against the art, against the tapestries. We were bursting into people's rooms who were having fun with each other, throwing buckets of freezing cold water on them. We basically destroyed the place. And the next morning, Richard shows up and he gets out of his Rolls Royce, and I'm walking outside and I went, "Oh God." And I start backing up and he goes, you, I'd like a word with you if you don't mind. And I'm looking down like this going, "What do I do?" And I'm looking at his shoes and thinking, "Boy, this guy's got really nice shoes." And he says, "I understand you lot had a bit of fun last night." And I said, yeah. He says, "Well, the next time you decide to do that in my place, at least have the decency to invite me to it." That's awesome. All he said.
Nice.
Years later, I'm recording the first Goddo album at a studio in Montreal. And I used to walk across the road in my fuzzy pajamas and my terry cloth, because that's how I record. And I hear this guy at this place called Gibby's going, "I know you. I know you. I know who you are. I know you." And it's Richard sitting with some record company guys in Montreal. And I said, "Oh, hi, Richard." I said, "Yeah, I'm Greg from Flood." He goes, "That's right. You owe me 30,000 pounds.
Oh.
And I said, "I was just the bass player, man. I was just a salary guy. I don't owe you nothing." And I got my carafe of wine and some escargot and went back. And I'm still kicking myself that I didn't bring him into the studio to show him what I was doing. It was just such a missed opportunity. But he sort of threw me there with that "you owe me 30,000 pounds" thing.
You should have
I think 30,000 pounds back then was $100,000 Canadian,
Yeah. You should have invited him into the studio and then afterwards said, "By the way, the ticket of this was 30,000 pounds.
That's right. Yeah. That's only to hear one song. If you want to hear the other ones, it's more. Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, so he got to read all that in that book. So that's pretty funny.
That is really cool. Okay, so now let's jump over to of course, the intro and some aliens. So there's some alien chat and apparently a bit of an experience that you've had, and I'm really interested because I've had a very bizarre experience myself. I don't want to necessarily say aliens, but I'm gonna let you shoot with yours first, though.
Well, I've been seeing them forever. I mean, I've had alien invasion dreams since I was a really young kid. And I'm going to get hypnotic regression done because these things keep coming back in my mind, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, it just came back to me about a year ago, that every time I had a really bad nightmare as a child, I was getting out of my room at the end of the hall, walking in the dark, careful not to wake anybody up, and I'd go behind the Chesterfield, that old burgundy Chesterfield with the floral pattern that everybody had back in the 50s. And I used to play behind it. And I would crawl down, and at the end of it, this monster grabbed me. And I looked up, and I realized now that what I was looking at was one of those big-eyed gray things, you know?
Yep.
But it would morph into my brother Ted, and it would start tickling me. And then I would go into whatever nightmare I was going to have. And every single nightmare started like that.
Interesting.
So I've seen these things. I've seen them over the pyramids in Egypt, 2 balls of light in tandem doing the entire horizon in about 5 seconds. And another couple hundred people saw them too. My first wife and I coming back from the Bahamas, she looked out the window of the plane and she said, "Greg, what is that?" And sitting on that beautiful white fluffy cloud base was this cylindrical object. It was pointed at the front and really round at the back. And you couldn't really discern how big it was, but it was huge. It was like the size of a battleship or an aircraft carrier. It was monstrous. And it was just sitting there. And it looked like it was enveloped in this smoky gray smoke, but there was no exhaust, there was no lights, there was nothing. It was just hovering.
I can almost imagine what that looks like. If you've ever seen the Flight of the Navigator.
Just think of an ice cream cone made out of smoke on this lying on its side. That's what it looked like, an ice cream cone.
Yeah.
And then I called ding, 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 and the stewardess came over when we could still call them stewardesses, you know. The flight attendant, he said, politically correct, came over and I said, "What's that?" And she looks out the window and she goes, "Holy shit." And she instantly runs down to the front of the plane. But we watched it till it was out of sight because we were moving. We're doing 500 miles an hour. This thing was just sitting there. Yeah. So we watched it till it was just a pinprick. And she kept walking by us. And finally, ding, ding, ding. And she came over and I said, "So what was that?" And she goes, "What was what?" And I said, "Oh, come on." I said, "You saw that as well as we did." And I said, "You know, if I had a gun," this is way before 9/11. I said, "If I had a gun, we'd be on our way back there to have a look now." She says, "Don't even say that on this plane." And then she disappears. When we land in Toronto, the captain comes on, tells us before people jump, he says, "Before you start jumping up for your luggage and stuff, please stay in your seats. We've got a little bit of a problem. We're going to bring on another crew, and we want to thank you for flying with us." And that whole flight crew was taken off the plane.
Really?
Now, why would they take a whole flight crew off the plane? To debrief them, right?
Yeah.
And the other crew came out on, and when I got out, I remember going up to the counter and saying, "Hey, I was on that flight, and we saw something, and that stewardess saw it, and they said, we don't know. We have no idea what you're talking about."
No, you didn't.
Yeah. So, like, I've seen them everywhere, you know, like I just had an experience about 2 months ago. The kid across the road said, "Did you hear those sounds out in front of the house last night?" I went, "No." So I went out the next night, you know, having a smoke. And all of a sudden I hear these big clangy sounds, clank, clank, and they're moving. They're going across and down the street, and then they're going south, and then I could hear them fading, and then they're going east again, and then they come up to, and the kid comes running. He says, "That's what I heard last night." And I'm looking around. You can't see anything in the sky. I get out my phone. I start just randomly shooting in the sky, and I start taping it. And I got a really good recorder on my telephone. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it jumps behind us about 4 blocks. We can hear it bouncing off the apartment buildings in the back.
Really?
And I called my friends at MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network, because I go to all their lectures and stuff. I know them all really well. All those guys on TV, you know, the talking heads guys on Ancient Aliens. I know all those guys.
Yeah.
And he says, "If you hear it tomorrow night, get on the phone to us and we'll get a crew down there." But he says, "Of course you're hearing it." He says, "They follow you around." But I mean, I'd never heard anything in my life like this. And you know, people, I've always say this when I'm doing these interviews, people are going to go, this guy's crazy. But no, I'm not. You know, I mean, I'm a pretty lucid guy, pretty smart guy. What I see is what I see and what I hear. The funny thing, nothing showed up on my camera and no sound was recorded. And these were loud. Yeah, these huge metallic. It sounded like this thing walking, you know, bang, bang, but you couldn't see it. You could just hear it, you know. But the best one of all time, I was on a flight with my son. He was 3 years old at the time, coming from Vancouver to Toronto, or Winnipeg to Toronto, one of those. And we got on the plane. It was a late night flight. It was a red eye. And I remember my son was all cranky and stuff. And we were in the front row. And there was a guy sitting at the window seat. He didn't look at us. I didn't care. I was trying to get my kids settled. But we get up to cruising altitude and all the lights go down. And this guy turns to me, and I still haven't looked at him. He says, "Do you know what a Foo Fighter is?" And I went, "Yeah, I know exactly what a Foo Fighter is." Now, we're not talking about the band.
Yeah.
Because I know Pat Smear's a friend of mine who's in the Foo Fighters, so I know another Foo Fighter besides what this. But he was talking about, and I told him, in World War II, when the Allies were fighting the Nazis in dogfights over the English Channel, these balls of light would come flying in amongst them while they're machine gunning each other. And these guys would be freaking out because these things were like zapping in amongst and freaking all these guys out that were fighting up there. Yeah. The Germans thought it was the Americans thought it was the Russians, nobody thought it was the Canadians. I just want to point that out, but that was a joke. Anyway, so I'm telling him about all my experiences, and I look down and I see his left hand sitting on his lap. And I'm staring at it. I've stopped talking. And as you guys can tell, getting me to stop talking is almost an impossibility. I'm looking at this guy's hand, and his fingers are that long. They're 10 inches long. And I'm just staring at this and going, this guy's not from around these parts, and he's showing me that. And that's when I finally turned and looked him in the face, and I passed out instantly. And when I woke up, we were deplaning. I don't remember seeing him again. I didn't remember him again for like 20 years.
Ooh, strange. Now, that wasn't like after a lot of complimentary alcohol or anything, right?
None. I was traveling with my 3-year-old. Not a drink.
Yeah. If you're
and people always ask that, and as they should, knowing my background.
Yeah.
I said, but that actually happened. I mean, you know, so once again, Leslie Mitchell Clark, she's a hypnotherapist, a regressive hypnotist, and she's offered at one of these ACE, the alien conventions that all of us go to that believe in this stuff. And she said, we would like to film you under hypnotic suggestion or therapy and take you back to those times so that you can see what you were looking at, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not nervous about it. I'm quite anxious to do it this year, you know?
Yeah. That sounds
It'll be a whole other book I can write.
It sounds like it. I mean, just the stories alone, I know a lot of people who would love to hear more about that. You know, people are also trying to figure out what's going on. I did have an experience when I was, I guess I was probably about 18 years old, and I was totally fine one day, and then the next morning I go to stand up, and I cannot put weight on my foot for no reason. Like I couldn't understand why. Eventually, I go up to my parents' house, and my dad, of course, who was a field medic, he went to look at it, and he drew out a piece of very odd colored wire about this long from my heel that went right into my foot. And there was like absolutely no, all I know is I don't remember anything from the night before. I just remember there being almost like a pulsing of a light just as I was falling asleep. And I didn't move. I didn't dream. I woke up in the exact same position I went to sleep.
Yeah.
And then he pulled this thing out, and he said it was the weirdest looking wire because it didn't look normal. It didn't look like steel. It didn't look like an aluminum. It was just kind of a very odd thing. And he didn't, we didn't think much of it. We kind of discarded it. And I always kind of joked about, like, I don't know. The only other thing I could think of is if I got picked up by aliens and they stuck something in me, like a tracker or something. But
well, I've got one.
Do you?
I've got an implant in the back of my brain. Yeah.
Go on.
When I told my doctor about it, and I told him the story about the guy on the plane, because that's when I figured it went in, is when I passed out. Either went in the nose or the mouth or the ear, and then went and embedded itself back there. And I told my doctor, and he says, I'm going to send you for an MRI. Well, first I went for a CAT scan. And I think there's a picture of my brain in this book. And you can see the mouse pointing at this thing. And that's when the technician left the room to get another doctor in. And of course, that's when I go click, 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 and put them up on Facebook.
Yeah.
So then my doctor gets me in, and I tell him what I think it is. And he says, you're going to go for an MRI now. You are not to tell the technician this story, because they will call the nutty people and they will take you away in a straitjacket. So I go into this place where I'm going to get the MRI. I said, look, hypothetically, let's just hypothetically now, say you were sitting beside an alien on an airplane. And when you realize this, and this is hypothetical, keep that in mind, he put a little thing in your ear or your nose or something, and it went to live in the back of your brain. Just as hypothetical. She says, okay, well, this isn't hypothetical. She goes, this thing you're going into is the strongest magnet that you could ever have your head put into.
Yeah.
So if this thing that you think you've got there has any metal in it, what's going to happen? And this is not hypothetical. This is her talking now.
Yeah.
It's going to come flying through your brain and through the top of your head. So I said, I said to myself, well, I was just kidding anyway, because I figured, if it's advanced enough that they could do this kind of thing, and thousands of people have these, probably millions of people have these, I said, I'll take a chance. And then my doctor called me in, and he says, I don't believe this either, but you have a foreign object down in the back of your brain down there, and they don't know what it is. And it's not metal, but they don't know what it is. I said, so did they say anything about removing it? They said, yeah, they'd have to take your head apart to get it out. I said, you know what? It doesn't hurt. I think I'll just keep it with me,
Yeah. That's
so I know your people that are watching this right now think, I thought this guy used to be a serious rock musician. He's nuts. This guy's nuts. And I have a great story called Aliens et Moi, Aliens E.T. There's the big joke. Moi, French, aliens and me, in this book. And it's the longest story in the book, because I'm really into this stuff, and I've been fortunate enough my whole life to have seen these things like in the sky, and coming home late at night, and I see this blue orb stationary, and I thought, that's weird. And I stop my car, and all of a sudden it turns red and starts doing this, and then it stops again and it goes blue. And I thought to myself, if I could see it could probably see me. It's 4:00 in the morning on a country road, and I'm out of there,
Yeah. Now, I do have a question. When you saw these things, how many of them were in Canada?
Quite a few.
Really?
I mean, I've seen them. I've seen them in Egypt. I've seen them in Jamaica. I've seen them in the Dominican. A couple of them in Ontario for sure, up north, traveling.
Okay.
Out west in the mountains, in when I was writing my book, out in Canmore. The UFO guys say, we call you a magnet. So they follow you around. There's this incredible place in Sosua in the Dominican Republic, and my hosts down there said, when I got talking about this stuff, they said, we've got to take you and show you something. And he drove me up this hill that I never would have tried to walk up in downtown Sosua. Nothing was up there except for about a 50,000 square foot alien castle. All the spires had UFOs on the top of them. It's called Castillo Mundo King. And we went in, and then we ran into Rolf, this old German dude that built the place. And Rolf gets visited by these things all the time. So at one point, when he realizes that I'm sort of a contactee as well, he takes us up to this little tiny room where he lives at the top, and goes rooting through this box and brings out like a marble, like the big ones we used to play. You'd have the little ones and then the Aggies.
Yeah.
And it was opaque. It was amber colored. You could see there was something inside of it, but you couldn't really see what it is. And I said, what is that? And he goes, this is what the spacecrafts are made of. And he says, hold out your hand. I'll knock it off with the German scientist accent. He puts it in my hand, And he says, drop it. And I dropped it, and the thing bounced over my head, just dropping it at waist level. Now, that defies everything that we know about physics and gravity, everything. You'd have to throw this. It would have to be like an Indian rubber ball that you would over your head, jump up and throw it to get it to go over your head. But I just dropped it, and it went bang. And then he said, this is what spacecrafts are made of, you know? Yeah. They gave it to him. And I said to him, you know, have you seen them? He goes, no, I never. He says, but when they're in my presence, I can smell them. And he says they communicate telepathically with me. I said, what do they want? He goes, well, they're going to destroy us. I said, why? He goes, because we're in the way. Now, he died a couple years ago. They were supposed to be looking after him, but he died of starvation. So they weren't doing a very good job of looking after him, you know. This place is real. I went down there with my daughter a couple years ago, and her girlfriend came with us who spoke Cajun. And the only kid that worked in the place was a kid from Haiti. Most of the Haitians are terrified to go in this place. It's a pretty spooky place. And this girl was hot, and she started flirting with this guy to find out stuff. And the next thing, you know, we're up in the guy's room going through the boxes trying to find it, because I said, I'll buy that off you if we can find it, you know. But you should check it out. It's called, and any, you know, viewers out there, if you think I'm completely nuts, you got to see what this guy built. It's called Castillo Mundo King. So it's CASTILLO MUNDO Castillo Mundo King. Okay. And you can go down there. Guy comes out. They grab 5, you know, piachos or whatever the hell money is down there, pesos, and then in you go, and you can walk around for hours in this. And it's loaded with incredible Haitian carvings, and there's one galley with like 4 40-foot UFO models in it. You know, it's just the craziest place.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. That is really interesting. It's funny because we always ask like 20 questions to our guests, and the most important one to me is, do you believe in aliens? And I'm always amazed when I come across 1 or 2 people who say no. It boggles my mind how you could think you're the only person or the only species in the entire galaxy.
Actually, you know, I'm suspecting right now that Ferdy is an alien. I'm seeing that look in his eyes, like
he knows too much.
Yeah, quiet Earthling, you're telling too much here. He's just got those eyes.
Born to us.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm not a cat guy. In fact, cats are like both books. It's like they're my nemesis, right? You know, so we have 2 cats.
Cats are aliens. I've been abducted by cats for 50 years. I mean,
there you go. Then you know it's true. I have this little girl cat. We have a big fat cat, and I mean, this guy's square. Okay, his name is Tesla. Okay, the smartest guy that ever lived. Yeah. This cat is the dumbest creature on the planet. You know.
Do you like Jacob's ladders, like arc out of him and stuff like that? Is that what you call him?
No, it's the little girl that does that, and she loves me, but she sits with her face right here. And, you know, she's got fangs and claws and things. And she's like right beside my eyeballs and stuff. And I go, I know what you're doing. Those antennae, you're reporting everything you see and do back to the mothership. I'm onto you.
Of course they are.
Yeah, I agree. Those are antennae coming out of their face. That'll be my next book, actually, is the...
Maybe she was just waiting for you to...
Hey, you're preaching to the choir here, Greg. I've known this for decades.
Maybe the cat's just waiting for you to open your mouth so she can get that communication device at the back of your head.
Just to zap in there and tear it out. Yeah. Well, I'm quite happy with it there, because I'm sure a lot of the things that I've thought up over the years I've always said, you know, I don't know where my songs come from. Mm-hmm. You know, they just appear in my head. So whoever these aliens are, I wish they give me some better lyrics. You know, I could use some better lyrics. I mean,
maybe you just need a better translator for what they're telling you.
Yeah, maybe "Oh Carol, Kiss My Whip" means something.
It does to Carol Pope, doesn't it?
It does to her. Maybe "Let That Lizard Loose" is like a secret for discovering the cure for cancer or something.
Really? I thought that was more of an earthy Dylan-esque metaphor.
That's why. I have a story in the new book about I was on the Facebook one day when I get a friend request from Bob Dylan. Okay.
Wow.
So, I'm looking at the screen, friend requests from Bob Dylan. Do I know Bob Dylan? No. Does he know? No, he doesn't know. So I write back. I happen to know that my good friend Paul James, who Dylan has been following around for years, he shows up at Paul's club gigs. He pays his $5 and he hides in the back, and he goes to policemen's benevolent gigs that Paul's doing. And Paul looks over the side, and in the curtains, Dylan's standing there. So he does stuff like that, and this is for real. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, there's no way this is Bob. So I said, hey, I've got a question for you. You just signed a mutual friend of both of ours to tour with your new band. Who is it? Simple enough question, right? It's nothing offensive there. He writes back, do you have a functioning brain? That's what he writes back. I just did it in his voice, but yeah, do you have a functioning brain? Do I have a functioning brain? So I have another half a bottle of wine. Now my brain is really working. Okay. and I write him back and I said, listen, asshole. People don't even believe it's me on Facebook, and I'm supposed to believe some idiot that tells me he's Bob Dylan and then insults me. I said, the answer to the question is Paul James. And as far as how my mind works, ask Gordon Lightfoot or Ronnie Hawkins the next time you see him. It was Bob Dylan.
So did you accept his friend request after all that?
No, he got rid of me. So the next thing I did was I went on his brand new Facebook thing, and there's an explanation saying, my son Jacob says that I'm totally out of touch with what's going on. So I've decided this little experiment. Now, had I read that first, I wouldn't have told Bob Dylan that he was an asshole. So that week we're doing a John Lennon annual tribute down at Jeff Healy's club, and I'm on Q107 talking about it. So of course, what do? I tell the story of the Bob Dylan story because we have an event and people are going, I'm attending. Bob Dylan apparently is going to attend. He's now watching me and says, I'm attending. So of course I tell this story. And the gig sells out like crazy because they're all expecting Dylan to show up.
Yeah.
I mean, who cares if I'm singing John Lennon? If Bob Dylan shows up, we'll get him up. So I said, listen, if you come to the show, just look to the left and look to the right, and you never know who the heck's going to be sitting next to you. But anyway, that's the end of that little story. But I did actually call Bob Dylan an asshole.
He deserves a bit of humility every now and then. You should get the Order of Canada for doing that.
My mother worked at the Friars Tavern. That story is in this book. My mother worked at the Friars Tavern at Yonge and Dundas Square when I was a kid, when I was 13, just starting out. And I would go every Saturday afternoon and I would watch Levon and the Hawks play. They play there. Ronnie Hawkins came in there, David Clayton Thomas. I'm only 13 years old and I'm meeting all these guys that are going to be legends,
Wow.
And in fact, my mother bought my first bass amp off Rick Danko. Rick insisted that I had bass player fingers. So then, of course, after I went, wow, I have a bass player. Rick Danko, Mom says I have bass player. And then he sold her an amp of his for $300, which I had. But one night I came back from Yorkville when I was about 17 years old. My mother was still working there. And she says, do you know a guy named Bob Dylan? No, I didn't at the time, and I had no intention of calling him, that word again. So I said, well, I know who he is, Mom. She goes, well, he's been hanging around the club with Levon and the boys the last couple of nights. And tonight when we closed, Mr. Josie, who was the guy that ran the place, great guy to be respected. She says he let them jam, and this Bob Dylan guy got up and sang with Levon and Robbie, and she goes, he's not much of a singer.
And she was absolutely right.
She was absolutely correct. But trust us Godovitz family to call them like we see them. We don't care how big they are.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. Bob Dylan,
bless. Salt of the earth.
You can't sing and you're an asshole. Okay, just
probably.
Yeah, it's like you're not saying anything incorrect.
Well, like I said, we call them like we see them in our family. Just.
Well, it's good because this way you can easily say that you're one of probably few people who've actually outright just called him an asshole to his face.
Well, on Facebook.
Well, that's the new face nowadays, right?
Do you know when I joined? I was one of the earliest people to join Facebook because I saw Leslie Stahl talking about it on 60 Minutes. So I sign up, and my first friend, Facebook pal, is Mark Zuckerberg.
Really?
And I'm looking at this guy and going, who the hell is this nerd? I don't know this guy. I didn't ask for – that was my first friend on Facebook. And Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes was my second. I told her I knew J.D. Roberts, John Roberts, that used to be with Much Music, and now he was – now the presidents knew who he was, CBS News. I mean, they both quickly dumped me pretty fast after they saw what I was up to. I mean, just – Mark Zuckerberg is probably thinking, we've just started this thing. Yeah. I'm sure they look in every once in a while. I mean, I'm the guy, I'm positive I invented the expression waste book. I'm pretty sure I was the first guy that ever called it waste book.
I would have loved that moment you're looking at it and you're like, Mark Zuckerberg, who's this nerd? Decline.
Yeah, he just looked like a nerd, and I think I don't know anybody that looks like that. I hang out with aliens and stuff, man. I'm not gonna hang around with this guy. He's got one of those clips with his pencils up here in his pocket,
The old pocket protector. Wow.
Yeah, pocket protector. Yeah, he's got one of those. He's got two of them, in fact.
Oh, jeez.
I thought it was a brassiere when I first saw it. Then I realized it was pens sticking out of it.
So, just speaking of basses, as both bass players yourselves, Ferdy and I were kind of looking at something. Ferdy, do you want to take a moment to show Greg what you were showing me earlier?
Oh no, please, not Greg? That, Ferdy.
No. Greg, does this look infected to you? No. It's like no. I got to actually, Greg. I'd like to show you my very first bass guitar that I got in 1989.
Very nice. Look at that. Was it painted like that?
Catalog profile copy of like a Jackson or something like that. But,
yeah, and
my friend sanded it down and did the zombie illustration on it and all of that. And,
so what's the make of it?
It's a profile, right? It's like a Sears catalog entry level student model bass, 3/4 size, short scale. Like 31-inch, like the Gibson EB3s that I think you used to play at one time.
It's funny that I wish I had known this was coming, because in my Beatles room downstairs, I have my very first bass that my father bought me for $50. And
is it like a Hofner copy or something like that?
No, it's a Supro pocket bass. So it's about this big.
Sweet.
Yeah. Wow. Eddie Kramer was over here. He's a great friend of mine. And he looked at me. He says, these basses record, because there's a piezo pickup in the back, and then there's another one in the back, and then there's another one, like a humbucker in the front of it. But I couldn't play it back then because I couldn't play. I can't play it now because it's too small to play. It's like a little toy. I mean, it's literally about, hang on if I can get it all, it's about that long. I mean, it's like a toy.
Wow.
Then you put it on a hook on the wall, and then when you're busy, with your brandy snifter, you tell your friends, "Look at that! I saw that. I was going to be a star."
Yeah.
It came back to me 50 years later. After, I don't even remember how it left my life. I was probably going up.
The very same bass came back.
The very same one. They told me at a music store in Toronto, we got something here you might be interested in, and they read about it in my description. Yeah. I said it was a 3/4 scale, but I didn't know that it was a pocket bass. So it was basically smaller neck than the one you've got there, half the size.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And it was jet black, high gloss, but they had a thing where you could, if you played with your thumb, you can do this and play with your thumb. Or if you played with your fingers, you could hold the thumb thing and play with your fingers on the top and bottom of it.
Right.
And underneath mine,
like the old Fender Precisions, where you'd be able to have the thumb rest on the underside. Okay, yeah.
Exactly. But I got that back. Now, my dad paid $50 for it. I probably traded it in on the Echo violin-shaped bass that everybody, because you couldn't find a Hofner back then. You couldn't find a Hofner Beatle bass.
Yeah, but the Echo was like that was like an Italian Beatle bass sort of thing, wasn't it? Or Japanese, was it? I can't quite remember.
Echo was Italian.
Right. Okay. Because yeah, my friend's mom had one. I remember like a violin bass, and that's the thing. Yeah, you're right. Nobody could get Hofners, and they were bloody expensive because they were a German import. You had to be in England to get them.
Yeah. Eventually, I think George Heinel Music on Yonge Street finally got them in, and they were expensive for kids. I mean, I was only 13 when I started, so we would go down there. Hello, Matthew. You got some guy named Matthew skulking around in there with you guys.
That's our regular co-host.
Send a happy hello.
Oh, sorry you're not. You know, I'm sorry you're not here to help these guys out, Matthew. That's all I'm going to say. They miss you. All right. Yeah. We used to go down there, Brian Pilling and I, and from our first band, the Pretty Ones, and then Flood, and we would just look in the window and stare at it. You know, they had Beatle harmonicas in the case and stuff. You know, and I want to quickly talk amongst yourself for 1 minute. I want to show you something interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always find it very interesting with stories of instruments that make their way back to people. We had Miles Goodwin on the show from April Wine, and the story about his guitar, how it basically had fallen off the back of a truck during a teardown, and something like 20 years later, it made its way back to him.
Yeah, he got it back.
Yeah.
Great story.
Yeah.
This here, speaking of the Pillings, I mean, can you read that?
Just barely. What is that?
Just a little bit of a shine on it. It's hard to see.
It says Beat Group at the top, the Pretty Ones.
Okay.
And then it's got my mom, call Greg or Ed. That would be Ed Pilling. This is our business card from 1964.
Nice.
And I collected everything. Pat Little, the great drummer for Luke and the Apostles, who eventually joined Flood, his lovely wife, Kathy, I don't know how the hell she got that. They've been around the music scene a long time, and she gifted that to me when I met her and Pat when they came back into my life. And I mean, it's just a treasured memento because that's the earliest piece of my own memorabilia that I've got.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. I have a big sprawling archive as well. I try and keep mementos as well. That's so awesome you have that.
I had 22 boxes of memorabilia that now reside in the University of Toronto archives. And
are you saying there's a Goddo wing at the University of Toronto?
Well, people could. This girl spent 6 months itemizing everything. I've got these sheets this big, and there's about 100 of them with everything completely museum quality curated. It's unbelievable. Wow. They said to me, "This is the most comprehensive collection we've ever seen." She said, "You kept everything. Everything that you ever did in your career, you kept it, you know." And there's fan letters, and there's ticket stubs, and there's posters, and like here's a piece of my collection that we actually sell repros of. I haven't shown you this yet. This is Goddo with special guests, the Guess Who.
Wow.
With special guests, the Guess Who. They were opening for Goddo?
Yeah. Now, that's amazing. Now it was Burton and Randy weren't there, but Jimmy and Gary Peterson were still there. And Donnie McDougall, who sounds so much like Cummings, it's ridiculous. In fact, when Cummings came back, McDougall stayed in because they could do harmonies and it sounded like Burton singing with himself. Mm-hmm. And then they had another, it could have been Kurt Winter or one of those guys that was playing guitar. But we were hot. This is 1978. This is when we were, with Baldry's management and stuff, and we were really making waves. And we came back after a tour and did this concert at Minkler Auditorium, which is a beautiful soft seat, probably held about 2,000 people at one of the universities. And Jimmy Cale came up to me, and we've known each other for years. Every time I go to Winnipeg, we still get together at the Rotunda Bar at the Fort Garry and talk about Burton Cummings for a couple of hours while we're drinking. And he loves that. He says, "You're the only guy I'll leave the house for." He says, "Because I know what I'm going to get." And then we just sit there laughing all night and making fun of people, Burton Cummings. And he came up to me and he says, I said to him, I said, Jimmy, I feel really weird about this, man. You know, that you're opening for us. And he puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, it's okay, Greg. This is your 50 minutes of fame. Enjoy yourself.
Nice.
I mean, he was such a humble, great guy. And he's still, like I said, I talked to him over Christmas because, we couldn't see each other. He's still alive and doing well. And he, basically when you're coming back to Winnipeg, because he doesn't leave his house. But if I'm in town and say, hey, Jimmy, it's Godovitz, you want to come and hang out at the Rotunda bar and drink and talk about people? And he goes, yeah. He shows
That's amazing. That's very, very cool.
Greg, I have to say, I first met you almost 30 years ago to the very day.
Really?
You don't remember
this?
It was March 8th, 1991. And my friends and I had driven through a blizzard to get up to Edmonton to go see Iron Maiden play at the Northlands Agricom that night. And so after the Iron Maiden concert, our ears were ringing. We still had the refrain of "Run to the Hills" echoing in our brain, and of course, but it was only 11 o'clock, and we said, "We're in Edmonton. We got to go party." So of course, and I was 19 years old, and I was only about 3 weeks away from my 20th birthday, and so we started going up White Avenue, and of course, White Avenue's packed full of people, and there's signs flashing and the neons all lit up and there's all these marquees for all these nightclubs, and then I'm squinting out there trying to look for something, and then I see on the sign live tonight, Goddo. And so I saw my buddy who was driving the car, I'm pulling on his sleeve, and I said, yeah, fucking right, we're gonna go see Goddo. Look, it's a $15 cover, we gotta go see Goddo. He's like, well, who the fuck's Goddo? Pull in, you heathen, I'll teach you. And so we pull in and we get in there, and we're all these scruffy teenage long-haired dirtbags from the East Kootenays of British Columbia.
People.
Yes, huzzah! And so we pay our $15, and we got there seriously. We just had time to get in, pay our ticket, get our first beer, and then the lights come on, and you guys kick into it right away, and you guys just killed it for the next 90 minutes straight. And I was just going, oh my God, this is so awesome. Oh, Carol, kiss my whip, that sort of thing. And then afterwards, I went up and was like, Greg, it's so nice to meet you. And you were very polite. It's like, oh yeah, and good to meet you there, kid. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. It's now that all this grunge and hard rock is all is all getting back in vogue again. Now's the time for Goddo to conquer Canada once again, And I couldn't really tell if you were glaring at me behind your tinted John Lennon specs or anything like that, but you were very polite. You were very good about it. You were like, yo, there, son. Yeah, okay, thanks.
No, but I don't think I can find anybody that could say I did this to hurt anybody or offend. I'm glaring at you now through my John Lennon.
No.
I'm old now. I can glare all I want. But I always really took the time to talk to because I was that guy once. I remember meeting Ronnie Hawkins and those guys when I was 13, and or the kindness that some of those guys that ended up as legends showed me. And I always thought that if I ever got in that position, I'm going to be nice and humble to these guys. They're the guys that are paying our bills. Yeah. And I had that attitude. There was recently a guy, they were talking about this tribute record I did for Brian Pilling to make his family some money when he was dying. And this guy wrote, in my 45-year career, I've never met a bigger asshole than Greg Godovitz. And I'm thinking, well, this is on a post about me helping out a dying guy. And I went and looked at his thing, and I wrote him in private, because I don't like watching that thing. I said, dude, I don't even know who you are. I said, and if you're claiming that you've got a 45-year career in music, why don't I know who you are? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So enjoy your trip into cyberspace, and off he went. I just wanted him to know that he was going into cyberspace on my friend account,
Yeah.
But it's not fair. But I was always really I would talk to everybody, or if I went outside to have a smoke when there was kids out there that couldn't get in, I'd say, how come you guys aren't in? We don't have tickets. Come on with me. And I'd sneak them all in the back door,
Nice.
We were really, I was anyway, I don't know the other guys, I never saw them on the road, but I was always into talking to the kids and finding out what they were thinking, what they liked and stuff, And it's stuff that I've passed on to other musicians as I've been mentoring them as an adult,
Wow.
What a lovely guy.
So amazing. So I now I've got to put you on the spot, Ferdy. I have to ask you, what was more memorable, the Zeppelin concert or the Goddo concert?
It would have to be
the Iron Maiden concert or the
sorry, Iron Maiden. Yes.
It's like no. I was too young to see Zeppelin, but Iron Maiden were great. That was the first time I saw them. But again, but it was just, and Goddo were great too. What can I say, Greg? But it was, I thought, and I felt, yeah. But again, it was two separate bands, two separate sets of music. But again, they both bands killed it. It was great to see. I mean, it was great to be in that Coliseum with, 10,000 of my best friends watching, Bruce Dickinson run around on stage with his 4-octave histrionics and watching the big 20-foot robot Eddie clanking around. I mean, and I pumped my fist to Number of the Beast. I did my part. But then afterwards, I thought it was an amazing, a second act to my night of rock and roll out of town debauchery, because
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Iron Maiden did come to our show afterwards, because that's usually what happened. When we were playing someplace and there was a big band in town, they'd say, "Where do we go?" And they go see these guys. I remember Cheap Trick came in to see us one night. They wouldn't let them in.
Very cool.
So this Uber groupie that I knew was in front of me while we're playing at the Gasworks. And she says, "I got Rick and Robin in a limousine out there and they won't let them in." So I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be right back." So I go out front. I meet Rick and Robin. "Come on in." I said, "You guys want to sit in?" And they look at each other and went, yeah, we want to sit in. I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And Rick says, "I'll do lights." And Robin says, "I'll do sound." And all night they did lights and sound for us.
Wow.
That's so awesome. Well, that doesn't surprise me. Any story I've ever heard about those guys, they're supposed to be the nicest guys on the planet.
Really nice guys. Yeah. Wow. And then we had Black Sabbath come in for a whole week when they were in town recording.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Greg, I just can't fucking think anymore.
Well, all of them were there, the guys. They were at Sounds Interchange where we did the Who Cares album. And they were a little bit out of it. So they were doing things like, "It's not working. Let's tear up all the carpeting in the whole place." And of course, that didn't work. But every night, Ozzy would come up to me and say, "Why don't you come back to the hotel? We're having a bit of a party." And I said, "Well, actually, I got something to do." So he was sort of intrigued why this guy who should be falling all over doesn't give a rat's ass. I was picking up my own girl and stuff, stuff that this little rock star did. So the last night, they'd been there for 6 nights in a row. And Ozzy comes up and he says to me, "Don't you like me?" And I said, "Yeah, I like you just fine." He goes, "Well, how come you won't come and have a drink?" I said, "Well, tonight's the night." So Bob Segarini and I go to Ozzy's hotel room. There's a glass top table. Oh, how convenient. And, Ozzy, pulls out the hors d'oeuvres, and we're drinking and, hors d'oeuvring on the glass top table. Segarini gets up to tie his shoe, and he's got one of those old stubby beer bottles underneath his armpit, which falls through the glass top table, shatters it. And then Ozzy became the guy that we grew to love. He went, "They're going to think I did that. They're going to make me pay for that. You did it. They're going to make me pay for that." Now, all the hors d'oeuvres were, we're not stupid. Glass top table is broken. The hors d'oeuvres have all been hors d'oeuvred, and there's no more beer. Good night, Ozzy.
Time to get out.
And we left. And in his book, it was funny because I saw his book and I opened it up to the page where he's talking about hanging around the gasworks, for a week. Did we get mentioned? No. Any mention of me coming to his hotel room and Bob Segarini breaking his glass top table with the hors d'oeuvres? No. He left it all out. So I put it in my book instead.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Ozzy.
History needs to be chronicled.
That's right. That's right.
It does. Fortunately, I remember more things than he does, obviously. So
should write up Ozzy. I didn't get your book. Now I don't like you.
I got a million of these stories, because and they're all true. I mean, we just had some insane experiences with either big people or guys on the way up that became big people. And now I say, like, Eddie Kramer, he was working on the El Macombo restoration like I was 3 years ago. I was doing curatorial things, finding, memorabilia and posters and stuff and getting them framed. And he was building with John Storick. He was building Electric Lady North. They were doing exactly like the studio they built for Hendrix. Mm-hmm. I left over something going sideways. I quit right on the spot. 2 weeks later, Eddie quits, but he stays in Toronto. And we become great friends. His wife, AJ, at first, Eddie didn't like me because the guy that owned the Elmo got Eddie Kramer, who's like, 78 years old, out of bed at midnight to come to the derelict El Macombo to meet me. Was he impressed? No. So the guy says, Greg Godovitz, Eddie Kramer. And I'm Eddie Kramer. My head's like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. Is Eddie Kramer. Eddie Kramer. What? Are you kidding me? And I shake his hand. He looks at the boss guy and he says, "Are we finished?" And then he leaves. He hated my guts. Then we go to New York. Yeah, wouldn't talk to me. He was dismissing me, like, just go away, But his wife, AJ said, Eddie, this guy is a really nice guy. He doesn't want anything for you. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He'll give you the sleeve off of his shirt. And he's a really talented guy. And Eddie started going, yeah, and now we talk every day on the phone. They moved to the place where I finished writing this book in Prince Edward County because they would come down and visit. And my friends always say to me, "You must pick his brain like crazy." And I said, "No." They said, "Well, what do you talk to Eddie Kramer about?" I said, "Hey, Eddie, you're putting too much garlic in the sauce." That's what we talk about. We talk about normal things. He knows what I do. I know what he's done. Am I impressed? Damn right. But, he's got enough people doing this to him every time they meet him, Yeah. So I'm not that guy. But, yeah, we hang out all the time. He actually remixed the first Goddo album for me as a gift for free.
Oh, so nice.
That's going to come out this year. Now, you can find that on my YouTube. I have a Greg Godovitz YouTube channel, and the Eddie Kramer remix is up there. And I would highly advise anybody that goes to find it tonight, put headphones on. Because, of course, he was always known for that swirling panorama of sound, Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden now there's a bass guitar in there, which wasn't there before. And there's a huge mini Moog synthesizer. And the whole album with the rockier stuff, which I always hated. I thought I produced it. I didn't know what I was doing. Now it sounds like Led Zeppelin with my little voice singing on top of it. It's really good. And we're going to put it out on vinyl this year. Eddie and I will sign the copies and, charge $5,000 a copy for them.
Yeah. Sweet. I'll buy one.
Yeah.
I need
10,000. Did I say 10,000? Did you guys get any questions? Did any questions come in except from Michael?
No, actually, from Matthew. No, actually, I'm really surprised.
Well, then if you're looking to answer questions, maybe I can ask you a few questions. Greg.
Yeah, because nobody in your audience appears to like me. So
no, you know what I think it is. It's just like you've got so much amazing stories. It's just kind of kept like I would normally try to interject and ask so many things, but I'm just so like, wow, these stories are amazing. So you just kind of listen.
Dude, surely there must be one guy out there that says, "Aren't you my dad?" my mom told me that you're my dad. I mean.
I don't know if that our show should be that moment.
I've had it happen when I'm playing live. This guy says, "Hey, I got to talk to you." I said, "I don't know if you noticed, I'm in the middle of a show. I really got to talk to you." I said, "I'm in the middle of a show." He says, "I think I'm your son." I said, "We'll be right back." And it wasn't, Oh. Okay, Ferdy, you got the floor, my friend.
Yeah.
So I understand when you were playing in Sherman and Peabody that one of your bandmates was Gil Moore of Triumph.
In the second round of Sherman and Peabody, that's true. Okay. The original band was the guys that I'd been in the blues band with, And that was John Bjarnason and Wayne Wilson that ended up in Whiskey Howl, which was one of the great Toronto blues bands. And Buzz Sherman was singing in that band. And then I played bass and Dave Wood played guitar. We had a guy, Peter Flaherty, that played B3 organ. When that went its way, we put a 4-piece version of the band together with myself. Dave Wood was still there, Gilmore, and one other guy whose name escapes me. And that lasted. And Gil and I mean, he was destined to be a success. Me, I was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So we had a falling out. And the last thing he said to me, he says, Godovitz, he goes, you make it your way and I'll make it mine. And damned if he didn't go ahead and do it. And we laugh about it now because we're still great friends after all these years. And when they were starting to do a documentary, Gil and I are great friends. We don't care about stuff like that. I mean, that what happens when you're 18 years old. I mean, you don't. If you worry about it now, you're just a goof, So no. Anybody ever had any problems with back in those days has been resolved. Where we go, hey, I was 15 years old. I was an idiot. Okay, I admit it. Forgive me. Okay, I forgive you after they hit you, Yeah. But yeah, Gil played in the band and we're still friends. And he has that great studio that I've recorded at Metalworks many times.
Very amazing.
Nice.
Quick question for you then. Of all the people that you have now met over your career, who has been the most impressive? Like, who are you just looking at and you're like, this is like the greatest day of my life?
Well, there's been so many. I mean, I've pretty much met everybody. I met 3 Rolling Stones. I met 2 Beatles. I met a couple of Kinks. I met Jerry and the Pacemakers, and a couple of Led Zeppelins, and I met everybody. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, meeting Paul McCartney for me was the big one. I mean, the girl I was going to the show with had babysat for Paul and Linda at their house in St. John's Wood in London. And she called me up the night before and said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, I got 2 tickets for Paul McCartney. Do you want to go? Let me check. Yes. And she says, dress up a little bit, I thought, well, what am I, chopped liver? I mean, so I wore a suit. I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. And I'll see if I can find it while we're talking about it. Mm-hmm. But we get there, and I said, why are we here so early? She says, we're going backstage. You're going to meet him. And I said, how long have you known this? She goes, for about a month, but I knew that if I told you, you wouldn't sleep. And she was right. So I got my suit on, and we run into Doug Inglis out in front. And Doug looks a lot like Paul McCartney. And he says, where are you going? I said, we're going to go meet Paul McCartney. He goes, I'm with you. So he didn't even have a ticket. And we get into Paul's dressing room. And it was like seeing a cousin. I'm only looking down, folks, because I'm looking for something. My picture with Paul McCartney. Mm-hmm. It was like seeing a relative standing there. Here we go. Here's the picture here. This is, I don't know if you can see that. I got to figure out how we could. Yeah. So there's Paul, and there's Doug taller and behind him, and there's Linda and Alwyn, the blonde girl's a girl I took, and there's me holding on to Paul McCartney's arm, and I have a look of joy on my face I've never seen before or since, because I realized I was holding on to Paul McCartney's arm.
Wow. So
we talked for about a half an hour, and I never mentioned the Beatles once to him. Mm-hmm. I'd found this photograph of him holding his bass up, and he goes, well, that's an old picture, that's me tuning me bass, And I thought, yeah, I know exactly what you're doing here. So he signed it for me to Greg, Paul, and the McCartney part was on his jacket. And I was going to say, what are you, stupid? I said, couldn't you have signed McCartney over there in the blank spot? Now it says to Greg, Paul, bleh. That's all it says. But it does. He did write it, so I let him get away with it.
Yeah.
Doug has got the same magazine, and he holds up the picture, and Paul says, what's your name? And he goes, bleh. He's, excuse me. He couldn't talk. He couldn't talk. So after the 3rd time, I said, his name is Doug. And McCartney looks at me and goes, thanks, Greg. And he writes to Doug. And he does the thing. So when we left the building, it was at the Sky Dome, we're outside, and I run into a scalper friend of mine named Bobby A. And he says, Christ, you look like you just ate the canary, you know. I said, well, I just spent a half an hour with Paul McCartney. Oh, hang on, I got to backtrack. While we were talking about baseball, I was telling you about the Blue Jays and stuff. You could hear this roar from 60,000 people in the stadium. And he starts shuffling his feet. And he says, you know, I really should get changed. I'm keeping a couple of people waiting out there. Oh, okay. So we went. So I run into Bobby. I said, I just spent a half an hour with Paul McCartney in his dressing room. He goes, wow. He goes, what tickets you got? I said, oh, we're way in the back in the nosebleeds. He says, give me your tickets. He gives me a pair. Alwyn and I go in. We're sitting in the second row right in front of McCartney's microphone.
Oh, wow.
So I just got upgraded big time.
Yeah.
The lights go up. And McCartney looks down and he sees me and he goes, hey, Greg, with the two thumbs up like this. And I burst out crying like a little tiny girl guide. I mean, he knows my name.
Wow.
It was an incredible moment, you know.
Yeah.
And then Richard Lester walked by, the guy that did Help in A Hard Day's Night. I'm the only guy that recognized him. You know, I went up and said, hey, he says, I'm doing a movie on this tour for Paul. Shook his hand, you know. But I've been lucky because, you know, I met Ringo. Steve Lukather's a great friend of mine from Toto. And he called me up and said, we're rehearsing up in Aurelia, Casino Rama. Do you want to come up for the rehearsals and hang out? I said, let me check. Yeah, okay. So I was there the next day. And I was the only civilian in the building while Ringo and who was there? Mark Rivera from Billy Joel's band, the guy from Mr. Mister, can't remember his name. Simon Kirk, I think was Greg Bissonette was playing drums. Todd Rundgren, nobody good, right? and I'm there watching. At one point, I was still smoking back then. I get up to go outside and have a smoke, just as Ringo sings, "Would you stand up and walk out on me?" And I'm thinking, that's exactly what I'm doing. You're singing out of tune, and I'm walking out on you to have a smoke. But I didn't tell him that. So finally, Luke says to me, he says, you haven't said anything, but do you want to meet the boss? And I went, Springsteen's here? And he goes, no, he says, that's what we call Ringo. I said, it's okay. I've already met Springsteen. So the next night before the show, we get taken backstage by his handler. And Luke comes in to make sure I'm behaving myself because he knows what I'm like. And he says, the guy says, no photographs, no autographs. I said, it's cool, man. I just want to shake the cat's hand. He goes, that's not going to happen. He just bumps forearms. Right at that moment, the door opens. Ringo walks in. He goes, I don't shake hands. I just bump forearms. I said, that's exactly what that guy told me you'd say. So Ringo starts laughing, right? So he comes over. And I said, you know, my friend Luke here. Luke introduces, he says, Ringo, this is my great friend Goddo. He's a great musician. And I said, yeah, I've been here for a few days now. You know, you probably see me skulking around and stuff. I said, I just want to tell you, you look great, you're singing great, and it's a shame you couldn't get anybody good in your band. And Ringo looks at me and bursts out laughing. And then Luke is like, and he bursts out laughing. And that's my Ringo Starr story.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Absolutely. So the two Beatles I met, I didn't make a complete goof of myself in front of, you know. They're just such a big part of, especially my life, because I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for those guys, like so many people, you know, that it was like seeing a relative like an old relative you hadn't seen in a while, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's happened quite a few. I find the bigger the stars are, the nicer they are to people, you know? And even with the modest amount of note after concerts, especially when people want to say hello, I'm sure for you get the same thing. You can see that they're nervous, and much like what Paul McCartney's so good at is disarming people so they relax instantly, even though you're the Beatle that you're meeting. Yeah, they have a way of making you feel comfortable, you know. And I've always tried to do that in my limited capacity. You know, somebody comes back and you can see that they're shaking, and you know, and you grab the pen off them and help them, you know. So lessons learned by the best, you know.
Yeah, that's
Right
amazing.
on.
So it's really, really cool, really good story. Now I don't know. Obviously, we're going to have to try to circle back around with you and hopefully get you back on the show again because we're not going to have enough time to ask us your 20 questions. And I'd imagine there would be some pretty cool answers. But
Did you ask any of them?
no, well, obviously you already answered the alien question, but no, we didn't officially.
Well, that was the most important one anyway.
Well, okay. Well, we must have time for it. I mean, now that I know this, I feel terrible.
No,
but
that's
I
okay.
mean, I hope this was entertaining and sort of funny
It's been
because
fantastic. Yeah. No, it's been.
This
really...
isn't the first time this has happened, by the way. They says, and here's our guest Greg, and then they don't say anything for the next 2 hours, right? It's like rant. I just remember when Kim Mitchell first started on Q107, he was just terrible. He couldn't do it. He couldn't talk, and he had nothing to say. And then he got me in once because I think we had a gig coming up, probably that John Lennon show. And it was, here's my old friend Greg, and then I just took over for 20 minutes. And afterwards he says, how do you do that? And I said, what? He says, how do you just like stream of consciousness tell these stories without being nervous? I said, well, first of all, disregard this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
The fact that this is going out to however many people it's going out to, I never think like that. I'm talking to you guys.
Yeah.
The fact that there's all these hot babes behind you out there, that's neither here nor there.
Yep.
So go ahead. Ask me, what was the big gun question?
Well, actually, sorry, before I go there, then I do have to ask you, did you ever hear about Kim's gold record story?
No.
So we had Kim Mitchell on the show. Super fun. He was a great person to talk to. He was saying that he was walking around Toronto one day, and he used to give out. People would come to him all the time and saying, "Oh, could you give anything for an auction or these things?" And eventually, he gave out one of his gold records out as a thing, and he signed it. And he was out walking around Toronto one day, and he was with a friend, and they saw a garage sale, and he went with his friend to the garage sale, and there he finds his gold record on sale for $5.
For how much?
For $5.
His gold album. Oh, that's bad. Well, how did he react to that?
He said, I said it was, well, did you buy it? And he goes, I didn't know what to do. He goes, I looked at it and I thought, well, how pathetic is of me to buy my old gold record back?
Hey, you wouldn't believe how many times I had to go out and buy a copy of this from some used bookstore because I didn't have any more. I'm going in to buy my own book. I mean, just like
that's crazy.
You got to do. That's a great story, though.
Yeah, it was really funny. Okay, let's get at least a couple questions out of you here, and these again are just some quick questions for our audience to get to know you better as a person. And we'll just.
You mean they don't know already what I'm like as a person? I'm an idiot. Okay.
Everybody, of course, is sometimes is one way in front of a camera, another way they're different. So they're just kind of some basic questions like, if you had to make up a word and register it into the English language, what would it be?
Spladoink.
Spladoink. Do you have a definition for that?
Well, I have a number of words, made up words, at least about 30 in both of my books. When someone says something so stupid that I can't think of a word to accurately describe the stupidity, I'll say, and then the guy came on to my wife, Jim Blorft. So Blorft is one of them.
It's like a Don Martin sound effect from Mad Men.
Pretty much like a Don Martin sound effect. I've got tons of them in my books. And this one is I've got one story where every single word like that is a word I've made up.
Okay.
Do you have a glossary? Yeah. Like, where you have them?
No. I think people can figure out when they read the sentence, and they go, "Boy, that's stupid." And then I go, "Jim Blorft," and then they realize how stupid it was, and that I noticed that Jim Blorfing was stupid. So that's a good question, but I've already done it. I make up my own words when I need to. I mean, I can't rely on Webster's. It's just,
Well, that's how language evolves, Greg. Make it up as you go.
Someday when my great grandchildren are going through the dictionary in 2085, and they're going to go, "Splodonk, our great Judge made that word up,"
and now it's here. Let's just got it.
God, he'd be so proud that he ended up in the dictionary.
Let's see. What Oh, if you can have a superpower, which one would you wish you could have?
Okay, I tried looking through people's clothes with my X-ray vision. That didn't work. Superpower.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know every week what the winning lottery numbers are.
There you go.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's the superpower I'd like to have.
Pre-commitment.
Like just to teleport into the future. Like if I ever got abducted by aliens that would let me know I was being abducted, I'd say, can we go into the future to tomorrow and then go back, but make me remember these 6 numbers?
Right.
Yeah.
Not before they draw, only after they draw.
Yeah. Just I want to know those numbers just so I could win once,
Yep.
But yes, I'd have to say that being able to go, yes, I've got it now. It's 12, 18, 49. And they're in your head. I mean, why can't this thing back here help me out? Hey, guys, please.
Yeah. Give me a hand if you're leaving something. At least make it worthwhile.
I got to show you this before we go.
Yeah.
Some guy gave me this, which I thought was quite nice. This is a, where is it here? This lights up. Can you see the light on it if I turn it off? Maybe not. Oh, there it is. You can see it sort of flickering on and
There
off.
it is. Yeah.
And this lights up down here. This is it. This is one of the fabulous things in my office, along with all the alien headgear and stuff. I have an office full of this kind of stuff.
Awesome.
So a fan gave me. I helped him out with something, and then he sent me this in the mail, and I just treasure this thing.
That's so much cooler than I've got a lightsaber and a Captain America shield. So in my studio.
Nothing
Nice.
wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, one more, and then I'm going to go have pizza.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see here. Okay.
But this is live, right? So they're getting the whole thing.
Yeah.
Aren't
all right.
you lucky people out there?
I guess the other one that's always a popular one is what gets on your nerves?
Ferdy gets on my nerves.
It happens. What can I say? I'm working on it. I'm sorry, Greg. I'll try better next time.
What gets on my nerves? What gets on my nerves? I mean, these days there are so many. I think the guy, when we finally, after the first lockdown, we went to a movie theater, and there was only 5 people in the theater. There was 2 behind us and 1 guy in the 3rd row, and we hadn't been to a movie theater in 4 months, and we're watching a movie. It was the only new one they had out. It was a movie about David Copperfield, but done as a modern thing. And while the movie's on, I hear somebody talking. No, they're not talking. They're arguing. And I look down, and it's this guy in the 3rd row having a screaming match with somebody on his cell phone.
Oh.
So did that bother me? What bothered me? Yes, that really bothered me. So I went down and said, hey, look at pal, we didn't pay to come in here and listen to you talk to your wife. Can you take this out into the corridor? So now he gets up. He looks at me like I'm on the bottom of his shoe. He gets up and goes into the tunnel leading from the corridor to the theater. And of course, because it's a tunnel, the sound is amplified, and now he's louder than the movie. So I get up again. I have no idea how big this guy is. It's dark in the tunnel. I go down, suddenly full of bravado, and I say, now you have to leave out of here because you're really starting to bug us. And he starts swearing at me and screaming, this is really important. I said, not to us. The movie is really important to us. You're starting to bug me. Next, he goes into this. I could see him in the dark. He's now ready. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. We're in a pandemic and you want to have a close interaction with my face. No. So I walk around him and I said, what's going to happen next is I'm going to go out and find security and call the cops and have you out of here. Of course I go out. There's no staff on duty. There's these 2 little teenage girls who are, taking your ticket. There's one guy now, as I'm explaining myself, because he's the only guy on staff, he's now hiding behind the popcorn machine because now his job is going to be to go and take this lunatic out, So I never got any satisfaction. The whole thing was, so that gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
Is that how people can't think about that we're all in this together, and we've got to try and maintain an even strain, or else people are going to be dying in the streets. we've already seen it in America with George Floyd, and people are losing reason. They're losing patience.
Yeah.
And they're doing things that are not only upsetting, but are dangerous to other people.
Mhm.
So that gets on my wick,
Yeah, for sure.
I was telling Ed Pilling from Flood, if you've ever read my first book, Ed is like 6'3". I never saw a fight ever with Ed on the road where it lasted more than one of his punches when the guy was just out.
Oh, wow.
So I said to Ed, I said, what would you have done? He says, well, he'd still be lying on the ground. Yeah. Ed would have just bopped him and the guy would have been out, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's quiet now. Let's watch the movie,
Exactly.
Unfortunately, I'm not that guy. I'm an avowed sissy, I mean, I'm not that good looking to start with. Do I really want people pummeling my face? No.
Right? It's like, this is my meal ticket.
So to speak. They might hit me in the throat and I can't sing again,
Right. Excellent. Well, again, we'd love to circle back around with you at some point, have you back again on the show. In the meantime, why don't you tell everybody where they can pick up your books?
They can not only pick up my book, but they can pick up various redone Goddo albums, which I just happen to have here from England, with 20-page booklets and all different photographs no one's ever seen. All the booklets are different. This is the album. I'm glad you asked. This is the album I did in Calgary with Paul Dean from Loverboy. He said, these are the best songs you've ever written. And as he turned out, he was right. And we recorded 12 songs with all-star musicians in Calgary. And then, of course, we've got both books. I have my own hot chicken sauce called In Goddo We Trust Cock On Sauce.
Ooh.
And then we have, which is selling very well. And then, of course, we have both of these numbered. There's only 100 available. We're going through them. And we've got more stuff coming. And, of course, what I really want to sell is the book, because even though I make the least amount of money, I put the most amount of work into them. And everybody, if you see a review on anywhere, they're all saying these are really funny. Now, I realized when I finished the second one, this one here. No, I can never get this right. It's all backwards. When I finished this one, first of all, they were both exactly the same amount of pages, which was really weird. They were like a page off. But I'd written nothing about my 8 years living in Calgary or my 5 years returning to Toronto and all the stuff that happened then. And I got some great stories. So I realized what I was writing, in essence, was a trilogy. So I've called the book, the new book is entitled The Idiot's Trilogy, Part 4.
I love it.
You want humor? You get humor. And so far, I've written about 100 pages, mostly about, so far, what we're going through with the COVID thing. And I'm writing, and Mrs. Claypool, my gal, I can't remember her real name, but Mrs. Claypool would do. She hears me cackling away in my office, and she says, "What are you laughing at now?" I said, "Read this." And she bursts out laughing, and she goes, "How can you find humor in what we've gone through in the last year?" I said, "Time plus tragedy equals comedy."
That's right.
So the world's is the guy that was in the movie theater in my book? Oh yeah. Does he come across really bad? Oh yeah, really bad. So that's what happens. We were out walking 2 weeks ago in a graveyard, okay, to get out in the sun. When all of a sudden I look ahead and there are 2 coy wolves coming at us in the daylight.
Wow.
Okay. They're not dogs. These are coyote wolves. Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't have our car. I don't even have my cell phone to, call 911. Nothing. We have nothing. Mm-hmm. And this woman pulls up and she says, I said, "We can see them. Can we please get in your van?" And she says, "You don't have masks on." I said, and she starts to drive away. And I looked at Mrs. Claypool. I said, "We're about to be eaten by coyote wolves." So the woman stops and she yells, "I shouldn't be doing this, but get in." And she got in the front and I dove in the back. And sure enough, they came running right up. So Lord knows, but I turned that into a funny story. And trust me, there was nothing funny about the smell in that woman's van after I was in there after that. And I think she noticed that too. So there you have it.
That's amazing. Now, just because you brought that up for your next book, of course, if the guy from the movie theater is going to be in it and he's really bad, did you make out like the hero?
Which guy?
The guy from
the movie theater. Oh yeah, he ended up on the floor. And, I just told the story the way it went down. That it was a total comedy of errors because the only two people that could have possibly done anything were these two little schoolgirls who were like too busy, what do we do? Like what do we do? They were like ripping up tickets and stuff. I mean, they weren't going to do anything, and I certainly was. It's Tesla, the big fat cat I told you about. Tesla, you want to say hello to everybody in the studio audience? Yes, he said hello. Yeah,
hello, Tesla.
Yeah,
great out.
This guy weighs about 50 pounds. I'm not kidding you.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, the big, he's square. I told you, he's a square. He's not even a cat. He's square.
That's amazing.
Oh, here comes a little girl. Here's the alien one. Madame, come here. Her name is Madame Curie. Madame.
This one you can.
Does she glow in the dark?
Yeah. Here's that good girl. There she is. See?
Oh, no.
Tell those guys that you're from another planet.
Yeah.
Come on.
They are from another planet. Look at that alien. Hello.
Her I actually like. I let her in my room downstairs. If he goes in my room downstairs, he poos on the floor. So,
no. That's not.
Yeah, every day. I said, hey, I don't know if this is lost on you. I'm the guy that feeds you every day.
Right.
Okay? If I don't feed you, you have nothing to poo. So if I starve you to death, you're in big trouble.
It's true.
Maybe it made it look more like a circle than a square then. But
well, it's been a pleasure, lads. But
100%.
I smell pizza. I smell pizza cooking somewhere.
Well, we won't keep you from the pizza. Again, thank you very much for taking some time on the show. We'll make sure for the listeners who are listening to this after the live recording.
Shop Greg Godovitz.
That's right. ShopGregGodovitz.com.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff on there. And it's funny because I always tell people when you get the book and stuff, send me a picture of you holding up the book. And then we're putting them up on the website,
Oh, cool.
But the other thing I want to quickly announce is that I, too, am going to be bringing back my old radio show, Rock Talk, as a Rock Talk podcast.
Amazing.
Oh, nice.
Perfect.
And because I still have all my notes from Rock Talk where I had just unbelievable people, I still have all their cell numbers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My first guest is going to be Eddie Kramer for an hour, which will probably be 2 hours. Larry Gowan popped by the other day to pick up a copy of my book, and I told him, and he'd been on Rock Talk many times. He said, love to do it. I called Steve Lukather from Toto. He said, I'd love to do it. So I'm going to get those guys to come on and hopefully we can sell some books.
Well, you should get Steve. Give Steve the heads up that his manager made a mistake by not having him on our show. So.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah.
Did you try to get Luke?
Yeah.
He's He's the nicest guy.
Yeah. Apparently, he's got a lot of people looking to get him on the show. So maybe.
Yeah, he could. Well, he'll do it for me because we're good friends and we laugh at each other all the time. So, and he likes my writing too. So,
yeah.
And he's in my new book. So why wouldn't he? I said nice things. Though I lied. Nice talking to you, lads.
You as well. And
nice talking to you too, Greg. You take care.
Thanks. Tell Biff I said hi.
I will.
So amazing. Again, for anybody who's listening on the road, we'll make sure that if you want to jump over to our website, we'll make sure we put a great picture of Greg Godovitz up on our guest section, as well as links on how to get to all this social media and all that good stuff.
Thank you very much. Yeah. By the way, on Saturday, when is this going to be aired? Or it's airing now? It's up there now.
Well, it's live right now. So as soon as we hit the end button, it will be out there. But the recording will then come out probably in about a month's time. So
I know this is going to be hard for you guys to believe, but I'm going to be 70 years old on Saturday.
Whoa, happy!
But you feel like birthday. A pair of 35-year-olds, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. If I don't have to look at myself, I feel great. But this is the worst thing about doing these things. I go, and I see pictures of me playing. I go, when the hell did my dad start playing my bass? When did that
happen? Oh, it sneaks up.
And this is me and.
Forbidden Planet.
And Greg is out of here again. Freddie, thank you very much for joining us as a guest co-host, and we will make sure that we have you as a feature on our show very soon.
Thank you for having me on. Very fun. Very fun.
Nice.
And we'll see you sometime soon.
Excellent. And we hope to see everybody again next week the same time.